Welcome back to Criminal Justice Corner. I am your host, Dr. Jennifer Matthews. Today, we have a very interesting case. A mother out of Kansas decides to put her baby down for a nap, something that we all do when we have children. But instead of putting the baby in a bassinet, she puts the baby into the oven. We're going to talk about this. Now, today I have with me a very special guest, David Hayes. I'm going to bring David Hayes in now. Dave, for joining me today. How are you?
I am well. Thank you for having me.
Can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I am a criminal psychologist, a forensic psychologist and criminologist. I forgot the Ph.D. thing when I put the name thing down, but that's okay. These things happen.
Yes.
I teach psychology and communications as well as consult as a cold case criminologist with some law enforcement agencies in Michigan. And most of my teaching is actually within our prison system. So I teach within the Department of Corrections and the associate's degree program through Jackson College here. So lots of both ends of the spectrum I get to deal with, the cops and robbers.
Absolutely. And I think you are the perfect person to discuss this case with because there are so many different angles that is happening with this case. What do you think?
Oh yeah, I mean, right off the bat, just it's at its core horrific. It's a horrific thing.
Absolutely.
It's one of those things. So like historically, our society for thousands of years has really been the anti-filicide. There's
Mhm.
any number of reasons to murder somebody else that we can come up with, except for one's children. And
Absolutely.
even ancient Greece, the bad guys were the ones that sent their infant children out to die in the wilderness, and they of course paid the price for it. So this is something that is not common, which is absolutely wonderful.
Right.
Parents killing their children. I think it's at its peak. We're only like 8 out of 100,000 children. Still, 8 is far too many, but it's an incredibly rare thing to run across, and then to run across the method of filicide being so absolutely horrendous. I mean, just to fill everyone in, it wasn't an unlit oven. The oven was on and
Right.
and baking.
Yeah, so to bring them up to speed, Mariah Thomas, a mother, 26 years old, out of Kansas, in February 2024, she had a 1 month old baby and she was going to put the baby down for a nap. She wanted to put the baby into a bassinet, is what she told people. And instead of putting the baby into a bassinet, she put the baby into an oven, and it just wasn't a cold oven. She actually turned this oven on. Now, we do not know how long the baby was in the oven, but we do know the baby was in the oven long enough to pass away. We do know the baby was in the oven long enough for the baby's clothes to melt, for the clothes to melt onto the diaper. We also know that the clothing was soiled. I'm assuming prior to being in the oven. That wasn't clear,
Right.
but they did take the baby out of the oven and eventually called emergency services. And when emergency services came, the baby was found deceased in the carrier, a baby carrier, and they also found a scorched blanket as well. So,
Yes.
David, that is a lot to unpack. Where do we start? Where do you want to start, I should say, because that
Oh,
was so much. Maybe let's start with the mom and her social media post. Let's start there.
so the way we usually should start is with what we know, the things we know we
Okay.
know. And we know
Yes,
that Ms. Thomas admitted to putting her baby in the oven.
she
So
did.
it wasn't this thing where she said it wasn't her, someone broke in and did it. She said it was
Yeah.
a mistake.
She did say
She
it was a
mis
mistake. She
she was
said
a
that
mistake. She mistake the
repeatedly.
oven for the bassinet or the crib or the car seat. So that's kind of where we're at with it.
Right.
Um, that's all we know now. Now, then we have some reports about Ms. Thomas prior to the birth
Right.
having, quote, mental health issues. So it was an
Right.
interview with a friend, and the interview with the friend, that's all that would really come out. So there was no diagnoses.
I was just
You
about
and
to
I,
say
of
that.
course, yeah, we
Right.
wouldn't have access to these anyway.
Exactly.
Unless we did a FOIA, and that could take years and maybe cost millions of lives. So who knows? But
Exactly.
but we have undisclosed, and so far as that we know, random mental health issues prior to the birth. Now, what we do
Self-admitted,
know
yes.
is that after the birth of the child, is that she had some social media posts,
Right.
and the social media posts. As an aside, social media posts are the most wonderful thing in criminal investigations to ever happen nowadays.
Because
FYI,
they
if you're
get
going to do
you into
something
telling
shady,
themselves. Yeah.
yeah, do not post if you're doing shady stuff.
And we know
Especially,
that. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
oh no, fine, go ahead.
I was gonna say, because we know that people are normally telling on themselves if they're on social media. They're
Yep.
divulging their deepest, darkest secrets. We know
Mhm.
that they're telling their innermost thoughts, and that's exactly what Mariah was doing in this case.
Right, and that's a generational thing too. So it's the millennials and Gen Zs, the digital natives that are now about who have never existed in their formative years, adolescence or adult lives without the internet. So this is something that we
Right.
see a lot in generational boundaries. And so she's
Okay.
posting these things, and she's posting that she has no friends, that people only like her because of the baby, and that the baby gets all of the attention now. So
And that's
yeah,
common. That is
it's
very
very.
common. A new baby is going
Mhm.
to garner attention from family, from friends. She said she didn't have any friends, so we're gonna say from family and from
Right.
strangers.
Yep.
Everybody loves a new baby. That's just normal.
Mhm.
And considering the age of the baby, this progressed quickly. The baby was
Yes.
only 1 month old. We know a month is 30 days, some months 31 days. So
Yeah.
we know that this progressed very quickly.
Yeah,
What
most of the
what
time, if this is gonna happen, it's gonna usually happen when children are older. So,
exactly.
over the year or within 24 hours of the birth.
Mhm.
And so neonaticide is what it's called when it's 24 hours within the birth. And so this is fairly quick.
Right?
I would assume, based off of maybe self-diagnosed or undiagnosed or unknown mental health issues prior to this, that there was a form of depression involved.
Absolutely.
What
I would agree
this
with that.
because this just if she did nothing and only posted these things, I would say postpartum depression. Just
Okay.
right off the bat, like this is a casebook example of someone postpartum depression. What I think has happened though is it's kind of gone into postpartum psychosis. And postpartum psychosis is like postpartum depression on steroids.
Okay.
And
It's accelerated, if you
it
will.
is. And
Okay.
there's so the behavior is more extreme.
Mhm.
The back and forth with good days and bad days is far more extreme. It's essentially a psychotic break.
Okay. Okay.
So if we're taking all these things, and prior to the birth there's these issues, you have the child.
Mhm.
I'm not sure about the marriage status or
Yeah,
baby daddy
right.
status or any of
It
that.
was
So
never spoke about.
right, because there was one reference in one of the reports to an unnamed witness that
Yes,
was
and they never said
intimated
who
as
it
the father.
was. Right,
Yeah,
right.
so
They never said this is the father. They weren't very clear about that. Like they were
right.
being vague on purpose.
Yeah, so maybe either media vague or whoever they were talking to was being vague on purpose. So
Right.
someone wasn't
Somebody
giving
didn't
up
wanna
the
be
information.
did not wanna be identified in that moment.
Yeah, or associated with this either. So,
That's true.
like when things like when filicide happens, whether it's a father or mother killing their children, they're usually ostracized
Immediately.
pretty immediately from the rest of the family and the spouses and we see it all the time. Well,
Yeah.
8 out of 100,000 all the time.
Right.
So
So, so we know what she did.
Mhm.
Now, what do you think, like that day? What do you think was happening for her and the baby that day? What possibly caused the break?
The I it it's not like the postpartum psychoses wouldn't be anything like someone just snaps one day.
Okay. Okay.
This is like a psychosis, like a psychotic break is a break. A psychosis
Okay.
is kind of like a prolonged mental illness
Okay.
over a period of time. So she would be there could be auditory hallucinations, there could have been delusions, there could have none of those. She could just be incredibly depressed and want to end this entire scenario. Um, and based on the facts of the homicide itself, there was some resentment about the
Towards the
child
baby.
there. Right.
Yes.
I mean, she didn't forget to put the child in, with a pillow over their face and smother them quietly. She cooked her child.
Yeah.
Um, so I mean, like right off the bat, we can say that like it when she says it was a mistake, it wasn't a mistake. It's
No.
not these things. Like I was telling you before, there is precedent though that mistakes have been made.
Absolutely. We
Postpartum
did talk
depression,
about that.
epileptic mother, put a kettle in the 1927 actually put a kettle in the crib and the baby on the stove during an epileptic seizure or a moment, and then another epileptic woman put her child in a microwave, and so they were just confused from the seizure, from the moment, from what was happening. I don't see anything in this about epilepsy. That
Right.
would be something would have been front page, screamed out,
It would have.
right away. The friend that they interviewed said that she probably did make the mistake because, of course, they didn't want to believe that.
That she
But
would do that.
right, and who
But
would? I mean, who would want to believe
right.
it?
But what I was thinking to myself, and I'm very logical, and this is the logical part of me, and this is not withstanding the mental health. I was like, okay, she's saying it's a mistake, but she thought she put the baby in the bassinet. So let's say she did think that. Let's say you wanted to put the baby in the bassinet, thought you put the baby in the bassinet, but you mistakenly put the baby in the oven. You don't turn on a bassinet.
No, you don't. So it kind of maybe she saw the same reports I did in some journal from 1927. I doubt it. But if you put it, for example, if you put the kettle in the bassinet and the
Right.
baby on the stove, then you were
Hmm.
trying to make tea. If you put
Exactly.
the baby in the stove, is the Bisquick in the bassinet.
Exactly. And there were
So
no
we
reports of that.
no reports
She just
now.
said I was putting the baby down for a nap. So there is like a disconnect there. And that's why I said
Right.
notwithstanding the mental health, because we know that something was going on there. We just don't know
Mhm.
what the diagnosis is to be accurate.
Right. And if I was going to bring it, I would say mother, that age, that location, the witness who may be the father, may not be the father, probably
Right?
not too involved
That sounds
with
like that she
things.
didn't have much help.
So someone with some mental health issues has
Hmm.
their child and then is largely left alone to deal with their mental health issues and their child.
And feeling
Uh,
resentment towards that child.
right, because I mean, this is just exacerbating all of the
Hmm.
issues that she has anyway.
Yep.
And at this point, it's kind of simplistic when we get to this point because we
Yep.
want to find that villain and that root of that issue. So if
Yes,
we're
we do.
going through a thing,
Hmm.
those of us without like I might have mental health issues, who knows? But those of us who are going through a tough part in life are going to find a way to blame something.
Absolutely. Yeah, we need a
Yeah,
scapegoat.
it's called a fundamental attribution error, and we're going to attribute someone's behavior to
Hmm.
directly affecting us. And if she's there, it didn't say if she was working, it didn't say if she had any childcare or help or anything like that.
Right.
So we can just assume, since no one's telling us this,
Hmm.
that she probably spent a great deal of time with this child.
Yep.
The child became the focus of the
Yep.
resentment
Yep.
because we can't be the focus of our own resentment because it's
No.
us.
No, we
And then,
can't
I mean,
hate
it's
ourselves, basically.
which is it goes back to the, it was the mistake. So
Yes.
she's not trying to get out of it. She's just trying to convince herself that it was a mistake. It's
Right.
more
I
for the
didn't do it
rest of
on
the world.
purpose.
Right.
It was an accident type deal.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
this is what we're left with. But then the choices involved though,
Mhm.
I is it just it gets horrendous at that point because now
It does.
it's borderline torture.
Yeah.
If that not it's not even borderline. And it's firmly, I mean, if we were going to check off the boxes of the psychopathy checklist, like
Mhm.
Robert Harris PCLR, we would probably get a pretty high score for this behavior.
Mhm. Right.
Um,
Right. I agree with that.
and but I'm loath to call her behavior psychopathic because
Mhm.
I'm just don't know the mental health issues that were surrounding it, like what
Background.
drove it. And so it could have been crying, it could have been anything. It said that the child was, I believe, in outerwear, it's like ready to go, and
Yeah.
the outerwear was burned as well.
Right.
So this kind of also negates the put it down for a nap idea. If
Yeah.
you're, no one goes down for a
Story.
nap, unless it's February and your heat's off, which
Right.
we don't know either. Kansas is Kansas.
Yeah, this can be pretty cold, but still in a bassinet, that's kinda a lot.
Right. And
Now
she had a car seat too, so there was some means.
right. Now, in your line of work, have you seen people with these types of, symptoms, these types of behavior?
This type of behavior, no. This this is so
You said this is
incredibly rare.
extreme.
This is extreme. But postpartum depression is incredibly common,
Okay.
especially postpartum depression that exacerbates a prior mental health issue.
Okay.
So in the reporting, they said that she was on medication prior to this, went
Yep.
off medication while she was pregnant, did not get back on medication.
And
Reporting
that's a
from the
trigger
friend.
too.
So
Yeah, right.
that's from
And
the
that could
friend,
be a trigger too when you are off of
right?
your medication for some time.
And when you're off your medication, so when you stop, most people with a mental illness, or personality disorder or some issue, when they stop taking their medication, they stop because the medication makes them feel strange,
Right.
and they don't go back on the medication because they don't want to feel strange anymore. Because their
Mhm.
normal equilibrium, their normal state, is that depressive state or how it feels, and then the medication can make you feel drowsy, or most men stop taking medication because they lose their sex drive, and it's whatever is causing you to stop taking this medication. She was probably told to stop taking the medication during the pregnancy.
Yes, for the baby.
Yep, depending on what that medication was, we don't know if it's a powerful antipsychotic, sure, or
Mhm.
even just a mild anti-anxiety pill would be something that could endanger the child.
Right.
But then not going back on, it's just start to snowball again, and
Exactly.
we get to this point where all the bad things in the world are around the thing you see every day. Like no one makes you angrier than family, right? Because you
It's
have to see
true.
them every day.
So
You have to
true.
deal with them every day. And
It's
it's
so
easy to
true.
say like you're my issue, niece, whoever,
Yeah.
like whoever I have to live with today. And if it
Cousins.
weren't for you, this would all be
Yes.
different.
Right.
And so it focuses for ill, or it focuses that resentment on that child. And I think that what we have here is just a whirlwind of a perfect storm of mental illness and resentment and being left alone and being off medication, and horrible things have happened.
Yeah. Now, say that our listeners out there know somebody who
Mhm.
is exhibiting these types of behavior prior to the fatal day. They know somebody who's going through postpartum. They know somebody who might be experiencing different mental health issues. What would be your suggestion to them? Should they get help? Should they not go off medication? Of course, saying they're not pregnant. What would you be your
Right.
suggestion to them?
So my suggestion would be to the people around them. Because if someone I could give all the advice in the world to someone who is off their medication and they will not pay attention because they're off their
No, they
medication.
won't. Right.
But if you're around somebody and you see that there could be any manner of a child endangerment or someone's endangerment to themselves, please call community mental health wherever you're at, and you can have them check up on it. I know that it isn't the best fix to have police intercede on mental health issues, but sometimes it's the only route we have. And I would
Mhm.
rather see someone acutely angry with me and hate me for the rest of their lives for spending a couple of nights in jail than doing something stupid. And that's if you see it, say it. As simple as that. Consider yourself a mandatory reporter when you believe someone's in
Absolutely.
danger.
Yeah. And I said I was going to make sure I said that too, because I am a licensed foster parent. And for
Mhm.
many, many years, we called it catching babies. So for many years, I caught babies. So babies that couldn't go home with their parents for whatever reason, I would go to the and rescue the babies.
Right.
So cases like this really speak to me. And I'm like, I have to raise awareness about it. Although it's a horrible case, a horrible situation, it speaks to me because I
I'm
caught
so
babies for
sorry.
so
My
long.
internet
I
was acting
rescued
up. I
so
was
many
like, what is
children. I'm
happening?
like, how could this be?
There's too
How
much
could we
truth
do
being
this to a
spouted, and the internet
I
said shut it
know.
down.
My editor will be able to fix it for me. So no worries there. I'll just pick it back up to where I was talking. I was like, it was
Catching
like,
babies.
yeah, it was swirling. I was like, huh? Okay, go back to catching babies. Okay. So, so for many years, I caught babies, and it was just the most rewarding thing that I did way back then. So now I have a child, but when I caught babies, I did not have any children. It was just me. I was out there doing my best to rescue as many children as I could because I just love kids. So I
Mhm.
was like, let me do what I can while I can. And I'm still licensed to this day, but I don't actively catch babies. But I feel like I'm still doing my part when I try to provide knowledge and education to others so that they know that there's resources out there if they have these kinds of issues or they know somebody having these kinds of issues. And that's why I think Criminal Justice Corner is so important because some people might not know. They might not know the signs to look for. They might not know that these things even exist. And so
Mhm.
that's why I'm happy when I have you, David, who can bring the knowledge to the listeners so that they can be well informed when they're going about their daily routine. They might even have coworkers who are dealing with mental health issues and they might not even notice it. So, can
Right.
you give us some red flags that they might be able to notice? Subtle ones.
Sure. Of course, aberrant behavior, things that aren't normal. Um, and it's so hard too because people put on a great face.
They do. Yes.
People are going. They don't. There, we have a stigma to asking for help in the United States. We don't do it, and there's like a point of weakness attached to having to ask for help, and that's a
Yes.
societal construct, and it's tough to get around. So if you suspect someone may be dealing with something, just ask them. You know, don't
That's a really great tip.
don't feel like you have to change the world or cure somebody or report to the police or something. A lot of times, people who are struggling simply want someone to recognize they're struggling, and that can help. At times, if there's acute personality disorders, or if there's schizophrenia or psychoses or anything like that, you'll know. There's it's painfully obvious. But if someone is feeling depressed, they're going to put on a great face when they're at work, and you'll never know. But you can see small things like don't want to deal with anybody anymore, or more withdrawn, or quieter. Even
Mhm.
if it's not a diagnosable depressive state and someone is just feeling bad that day, there's any number of ways for you to simply say, "Hey, how are you? How are you doing? Are you okay?" We don't have to have all the answers, and we don't. But recognizing that is absolutely key. Like this case, I would say, if you in listening to you and catching babies, um, I would assume that most of the time someone saw some danger to the child, or the mother or father themselves brought the child somewhere to leave them. So there was at least someone that recognized this danger. I think Miss Thomas was alone. alone with her thoughts, and they were thoughts that would be dangerous without a child around. I could, could easily slip into a suicidal moment. And also, a majority of women that commit filicide actually attempt suicide after,
Mm,
and the fact that she hasn't yet is telling also in regard to
that we know of.
yeah, that we know of, right. Oh, I think that would have probably made the headline too. So the more salacious things tend to make the headlines. If Bisquick was in the car seat,
That
then
right.
yes, that would have been in the news report, right?
Yes. Well,
But I think
David,
she was alone, and that's the sad part.
yes. Well, David, I want you so much for being my very special guest today on this episode. You provided so much insight and so much education for our listeners. So I want to thank you for that. And
Thank
you're
you very
welcome to
much.
come back anytime. And
Yeah. Let's
go
go
ahead.
for a less gruesome case next time.
I promise. Like, I promise. And if you're not already subscribed, please like, subscribe, and share to Criminal Justice Corner. And we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you.